I'd like to welcome you to the Smart Monday partnership update relating to Your Future, Your Super legislation. I'd also like to welcome clients of Aon. We hope that you find the session useful and informative. We would like to acknowledge the Gadigal people and the Wurundjeri people as the traditional custodians of the land where we are working today. I'm Janine Robertson and I'm here with my colleague Rashan Singapoli. As part of your Smart Monday team, we would like to walk you through some of the Your Future, Your Super changes that are coming up. Rashan leads our Smart Partner team. For those that don't know, that our Smart Partners are the relationship managers that our Smart Monday superannuation customers work with. Hi, Rosh.
Hi, Janine. Great to be here.
Before we do kick off, I do need to remind everyone listening that what we're talking today about is general in nature and hasn't been tailored to you personally. So the key points that we would like to take you through today are really to give you an understanding of the legislation, to update you on some of the relevant dates, to make sure that you know the action that you need to take now, the impact on your employees, as well as, of course, provide you with some direction as to what's next. So, Rosh, can you take us through some of those key points of the legislation, please?
Absolutely. So the legislation, like many of us already know, comes into effect from 1 November this year. And what it will do is, in essence, staple an employee to their existing super fund. Now, what the legislation does not mean is that employees lose their ability to choose their fund via the standard choice form. In fact, the legislation really is encouraging people to take an active participation in this choice, thus makes choice more important than ever before. From 1 November, employers will be obliged to pay the super fund to the employee's stapled fund if the employee does not complete a choice of fund form. When the employee does tell you via a choice of fund form where they would like their super to go, you will simply activate your process as you've always done so today. It's important to note that this impacts your process more than anything else from 1 November, particularly for your new starters. Your existing employees, however, will have nothing changed. As each organization will have a slightly different way of managing their onboarding process for new starters, the two most important things are the following: making sure the choice of fund forms are completed when new employees join your organization, and if they are not, the obligation then passes on to you to get in touch with the ATO to collect the right information.
Thanks, Rosh. So you mentioned the 1 November date, and I think it's important that we quickly cover off some more detail on the timelines. We know that the ATO are getting in touch with employers at the moment to provide information and education, so do look out for that. The official start date for the legislation is the 1st of November this year. The ATO have also told us that while at the moment their processes will have a manual element, their aiming is to have something automated by the 1st of July 2022. We also know that the ATO has said there will be a little bit of leeway for employers as they change their processes. They note that they expect employers to implement stapling processes from November the 1st this year, but they've also flagged that if employers are making reasonable efforts to comply, there will be a little bit of understanding for the next 6 to 12 months as these processes are fully embedded. As with any change, there are likely to be a few teething issues. So, Rosh, let's walk through the process for our employers in terms of stapling.
Absolutely, Janine. So while we all love a phone call from the ATO letting us know what to do, upfront we'd like our employers and partners to be prepared for this change more than anything else. So firstly, let me begin by acknowledging that your processes may be slightly different than what I've illustrated out here. But what we want to do is capture what you can do to minimize the effect of stapling through the green boxes up top. Basically, when your new employee starts, if they complete a choice of fund form, you don't need to get in touch with the ATO. This means the simplest way to manage stapling for your business is to ensure that your new starters have a choice of fund form when they first commence and sign that all important contract. Our suggestion is look at your onboarding packs. No matter how they're distributed, whether it's digitally or still in a paper-based format, making sure those onboarding packs have that all too vital Smart Monday information about all the wonderful benefits of your plan, along with a choice of fund form empowering the individual to make a choice that's relevant for them. This will help you avoid any delays, particularly in terms of extra steps following up employees or going to the ATO to make sure that they're ready to ultimately do their job. It's the simplest way to manage this change and pay superannuation to the fund nominated by your employee when they start.
I agree, Rosh. That choice of fund form will keep things simple for employers, but it is important to cover off what happens if you don't receive that form from your new employee. And that's when you would need to contact the ATO to find out if there is a stapled fund. Now, the ATO will then provide that information to you, and you can simply pay SG to that stapled fund. So, Rosh, how is this different from the previous system that was in place?
Well, while the wild west of super is still a place we're all trying to stay up to date on, one thing that hasn't changed is thankfully the choice of fund process. That remains the same and still remains the best way for you to know exactly where your employee wants their super to go. Like Janine mentioned, it's only on those occasions where that information is not available from 1 November that you need to then activate your stapling process and get in touch with the ATO. Then you can go ahead and pay to either the stapled fund or preferably the elected super fund and make that process so much easier. What it might be beneficial now is actually talk a little bit about that process. So if you don't receive a choice of fund from your employee, you will need to contact the ATO and use their online service to obtain the information for that employee's stapled fund. Then you can go ahead and just activate your clearinghouse and payroll process to pay to that superannuation fund. A reminder, the purpose of the legislation is not intended to make your employees disengaged, but actually to encourage them to really connect with their super. The regulators really want employees to be completing choice of fund forms because that means that the person knows where their super is and has made a conscious choice to engage. That helps you as an employer with your process, and it also reduces the burden on the ATO to maintain the stapled fund program. The other point to note here is that on the occasion where there is no stapled fund, your employee has joined and it's their first job. They might be very excited, but then that means that the default fund becomes all too important. So when you have an employee join who has no existing superannuation fund arrangement, you can go ahead and enroll them with the Smart Monday default fund as you've always done. The other point to note is that there is a different process for individuals with small intakes of new hires versus those with 100 plus. The ATO has said where you're onboarding 100 people or more, in one occasion that you can actually submit a file to get bulk information back from the ATO around stapled funds relevant to that group. This process is likely to take up to 48 hours, so it's really important that you make sure that your process captures that lag or that time frame so no one misses out on their pay packet or those all important superannuation contributions.
So, determining a stapled fund is not something that our employers need to be concerned with it. The ATO will make these decisions where more than one superannuation account is held by one of your new starters. But for information and awareness, we thought that it was important to share this process with you around how the ATO will determine that stapled fund. Put simply, the ATO will firstly look to see if they've made a recent determination on a stapled fund. If they have not, they will look for the most recent contributions. Barring that, they look to the account with the largest balance. Ultimately, the ATO will tell you the stapled fund, and as an employer, this process will be handled by the ATO to pass that information back to you.
So ultimately, with any change, there's a lot of different impacts, particularly when it comes to something as like superannuation, which affects both employers and employees. So let's talk about some of those potential impacts. Firstly, we've kind of already mentioned it, the effect on your process. If you haven't captured the impacts of stapling in your process, it can mean additional work for your payroll administrators. And given the larger intake groups that may occur in your organization, this additional process burden may become significant. So making sure you take those all important steps up front can be a way to solve for that. Secondly, it's ultimately going to mean that stapling means that you will be paying to a larger number of funds as a whole. Likely now you may have one concerted group of individuals with Smart Monday. This population can get quite diverse. If you do need to contact one of those different super funds, the process for contact and service levels may be different from each provider, which can add a little bit of additional complexity in supporting your employees. Finally, an area that's very, very important to Smart Monday and for a lot of our clients is your employee benefits. We really see superannuation as a vital employee benefit, which also has some associated insurances that provide you and your employees some degree of certainty that you may have cover at those times that you may need it in your life. While we're not suggesting that this is going to dilute any of those values for existing employees, when new employees, as they come along, having an awareness that they have access to these types of employee benefits that you've negotiated with Smart Monday, including great rates, certain levels of insurance cover, and new employees really should have a degree of education about the value of those benefits when they're joining, so they make that important decision that's most appropriate for them. This means that you may need to include additional information around our financial well-being and put a bit of focus on that education piece, which a smart partner is more than happy to have with you. So please get in touch with us and we can talk about these effects and how you can best manage them moving forward.
Thanks, Rosh. I think it's important that we think about the employees as well. And there really are a few risks as well as some benefits. The legislation does aim to reduce the risk that individuals will have multiple superannuation accounts created for them that ultimately aren't needed. And the process has been put in place to support this. So we hope that the legislation does help to ensure Australians' superannuation savings are protected. But there will be a requirement placed on individuals to really assess and compare superannuation funds. Despite the intention of the legislation to encourage individuals to connect with their super, there's a small risk that some individuals who've been stapled to a fund early in their career do not, in fact, pay attention. They will effectively have one account that is stapled to them. And should this account be inappropriate for some reason of performance, insurance cover, investment choices, or even the industry that that employee is working in, there is a risk that a disengaged member will not have the willingness, the ability, the desire to really assess and compare funds. Similarly to what Rosh mentioned regarding employee benefits, we know that employees benefit from the arrangements that you, as their employer, have made with their default superannuation fund, Smart Monday. Better rates, insurance design, access to support are all part of your employee benefits program. And it is important that your employees are made aware of the offer available to them to ensure they're making the best choices regarding their superannuation. Super really can be a very valuable asset. At certain life stages, it might be something where an employee really does hold their only level of insurance cover, which provides protection for their family should something happen. So overall, the stapling legislation really is a step forward to help Australians engage with their superannuation funds. And we hope that both employers and employees can overcome any of the unintended issues that might arise from this change.
Absolutely. One thing I like to say about super is when it comes to unintended consequences, super is super until it's not. So, how can we make sure that we capture some of those effects for you? Well, we've already started getting a lot of questions from our partners and employer groups around how stapling affects them. So, let me try to answer some of those quick fire questions for you up front. Firstly, does stapling affect existing employees? Simply no. You should continue to pay your super to existing employees the same way you've always done so. Secondly, do you need to continue to have a default super fund? Well, yes, there may be occasion where you have a new employee start who has no existing fund arrangement, at which point your default fund arrangement with Smart Monday can activate. Now, what will you do? What will happen if you don't pay into a stapled fund? We know stapling is going in from 1 November, and you'll need to follow the new rules. Like Janine indicated earlier, the ATO has shown that there will be a degree of leniency as employers adjust this process. But please know that penalties may apply where you're not complying with superannuation rules. Now, do you have to provide a choice of fund form? Yes. Keeping track of your process around choice of fund forms is vital, and understanding how choice of fund plays in your current onboarding process will be critical to your preparation for stapling from 1 November. Remember, where a choice of fund form is not available, the burden passes to you to ensure that you activate a new process and contact the ATO.
So, Rosh, we talked about onboarding packs and new employee documents. I think it's worth providing a little bit more detail there.
Absolutely. So onboarding packs for many of us are very similar. You have your tax file number declaration form. Then you have the most vital thing, your contract, which tells you everything you need to know about your salary and benefits, and it allows you an opportunity to provide your banking information as well as maybe emergency contacts. Then finally, you'll need to include that choice of fund form. As we've mentioned, this should be paired with some form of mechanism to provide information to your employees around the employee benefits, including their superannuation arrangement Smart Monday, because employees will be really engaged in this process. When you start a new job, you are euphoric and you're looking forward to this new experience with your organization. At this point, you're very interested in making sure that that employee has all the information, perhaps connecting them with your smart partner or even our smart coach team will encourage your employees to ensure they take an active choice in their super and hopefully allow you to manage the impact on stapling on your process.
So, Rosh, we've run through quite a lot. Perhaps we should just cover off those actions.
Absolutely. So at the very top is get on top of your new starter process and making sure that choice of fund form is there. Remembering that additional burden will pass on to you when employees don't make that election. Hopefully you now know you need to contact the ATO and they will have a lot of online resources, but Smart Monday hasn't sat on its laurels either. We also have created a Smart Monday employer hub that will help you access a lot of different resources that we're creating to support you through these changes and any other legislative changes that come around the bend. Now, the key thing is to making sure you factor in the effect of stapling and perhaps the wider network of super funds that your employees may end up using passively and how that affects your total employee benefit strategy. That's something that's really vital to you, and employee benefits, it's something that you really are keen to understand and make sure you receive the best out of. Please get in touch with us and we will help you put in a lot of activities that continue to enhance your employees' experience with the organization.
As you know, at Smart Monday, we're really keen for our members to take action. So, as Rosh mentioned, the best action you could take right now is to really be across your onboarding process, making sure that is robust. Of course, please connect with your smart partner or visit our website. You can email us if you have any additional questions. And thank you for your time.
Thank you and all the best.